Yeah, hi.
Dipangana, you can go. The session is live.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of BRICS Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to a webinar on future of energy innovation, renewable energy, and energy efficiency. The BRICS Chamber of Commerce and Industry was founded in 2012 with the efforts of eminent professionals, entrepreneurs, industrialists, bureaucrats from BRICS and beyond, having its headquarters in New Delhi, India, and country offices in Brazil, Russia, China, and South Africa. In the nearly a decade-old journey of the Chamber, it has promoted business houses for trade and commerce from all BRICS and neighboring countries. The Chamber is empaneled with Niti Aayog, the highest policy-making body of India, and the United Nations. In line with the BRICS 2021, we at the BRICS CCI are attempting to discuss and evaluate sustainability factor of renewable energy through its panel discussion. It will assess the current policy scenario on efficient use of energy and innovation in energy on a global as well as country-specific level. We also aim to analyze what policy modifications and future support are needed to promote innovation in this sector so that it becomes more society-friendly and sustainable at the same time. We would also like to thank and acknowledge the support of Chandrika Powers, Council on Energy, Environment and Water, CEEW, Center for Study of Science, Technology and Policy, and BRICS TV. Without further ado, I would now like to request Mr. Vishwas Tripathi, Honorable Chairman, BRICS CCI, to deliver the opening remarks. Mr. Vishwas Tripathi is the Chairman of BRICS Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the Chairman, Board of Directors, United News of India, continuously for 8 years from March 2013. He is also a member of the National Integration Council, NIC, constituted by the Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, and Chairman, Rose Multi-State Multi-Purpose Cooperative Society Limited, which works in the field of agriculture and allied sector. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dipangana. On behalf of BRICS Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I welcome all the esteemed participants, our panel speakers who are eminent in their field on the topic of future of energy, innovation, renewable energy and energy efficiency. I'm delighted to see that BRICS Chamber today is in the forefront of gathering, assembling so many stalwarts in the industry from across the world. And I can see that huge participation is there from the viewers at large. So I congratulate once again BRICS Chamber of Industry for making us attend this great webinar on and future of energy, innovation and renewable energy and energy efficiency. Friends, as we all know, renewable energy means that energy that can be replenished so fast, like solar, wind, water, biofuel, so on and so on. But I must tell you that whatever we get in energy today is all from the nature only, and nature replenishes everything that we have. Our fight today is to replace the fossil fuel with our renewable energy, that is solar, wind, water, others, right? So it's not that fossil fuel are not replenishable. Everything that we get today get from the nature only. But the thing is that the time lag for the fossil fuel is so long that we all say that it is going to end, right? So, but sun is available, water is available, wind is available. So these three major components have been taken as renewable energy, that we can replenish it so fast. The need arose for renewable energy because, number one, fossil fuel has a limited time span, like your oil, gas, and coal. Whereas in comparison, sun rays, wind energy, and water is for, what not to say, is for very long time. We can't put a age to them. We can't put a year to them at present. That is why these things are called renewable energy, that they can be replenished. Everything can be replenished, but fossil fuel has a very long gestation period. So, and number two, that we all know that fossil fuels delivers and creates a lot of environmental issues. Our climate change, the whole world is discussing that all fossil fuel is disturbing our climate. It is getting warmer day by day. And as on date, we have seen that in US, in Canada, in Europe, so much heat wave is seen over there in the last so many years that people have never imagined. In the same way, in India, I will say that we always had very systematic weather conditions, heat, rain, cold, and all these things, but it's already disturbed. So the reason being is that our earth is getting warmer. So and as users of this energy from the nature, we are just exploiting them in such a way, in imbalanced way, that we need to go back to our basic source, which is rarely available, that is sun god, that is wind god, that is water god, our Panchatatva, as we call in India. And I really appreciate, and even today, our fossil fuel is the main source of giving energy to all over the world, to all the people, and the need of energy requirement is not yet matched by our renewable sources. So we have a great fight among us. We have a great challenge before us, that if we want to do away with fossil energy and environmental issues and go back to our natural energy sources like sun and water and wind, then we need to work very fast. We need to work very in a very speedy way. And I urge that this Chamber of Industry, which has made it available for all the stakeholders to come on the same platform in two panels, panel 1 and panel 2. And I wish that with this, and I hope that with this webinar, we will come back richer in our thought process. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ibangna. I hand it over to our esteemed panelists who are so much knowledgeable, so much they have done for the world climate change. There's so much they have done for the world in energy field, and I will be honored to listen to their views and how best we can handle this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your kind words, sir. With this, we would now move on to the most awaited segment of today's webinar. This segment is divided into two panel discussions, having a brilliant group of speakers who are very proficient and well-versed when it comes to innovation and growth in the energy sector, mostly due to their vast personal experiences in the field. Warm welcome to Dr. L.B.R. Gunam, Dr. Jay Asundi, Mr. Arjun Agarwal, Mr. Hemant Malya, Mr. Frank Catolhati, Mr. Eric Lau, Mr. Ranjit Gupta, Mr. Ismail Guerrero, Ms. Kelly Alcock, Mr. Vinod Rajwani, Mr. Ram Divedi, and Mr. Pashupati Gopalan. Renewable energy sources and technology have potential to provide solutions to the long-standing energy problems being faced by the developing countries. The renewable energy sources like wind energy, solar energy, geothermal energy, ocean energy, biomass energy, and fuel cell technology can be used to overcome energy shortage in India, Brazil, Russia, China, and South Africa. India is one of the countries with large production of energy from renewable resources. Moving on, the first panel, that is Roadmap to Sustainability, Energy Efficiency and Innovation, will have the following speakers. Dr. Elbia Ganoum, Chief Executive Officer at Abeolica, Brazil, and Vice Chairman, Global Wind Energy Council, GWEC. Ahead of Abeolica for a decade, she has been working for the strengthening and sustainable growth of wind energy, the second source of the Brazilian electricity matrix. We welcome you, ma'am. Second, we have Dr. Jay Asundi, Executive Director, Center for Study of Science, Technology and Policy, CSTEP, Bangalore, India. CSTEP is a not-for-profit research organization with a mission to enrich policy making with innovative approaches using science and technology for a sustainable, secure, and inclusive society. He spearheaded the creation of the Center for Air Pollution Studies at CSTEP and establishment of AI and social impact as a sector of research. Welcome, sir. Next, we have Mr. Arjun Agarwal, founder and CEO, KR Biofuels. Mr. Agarwal specializes in sustainable paper, biofuels, and real estate business, and he is also a member at BRICS Chamber of Commerce. Next, we have Mr. Hemant Malya, Senior Program Lead, Industrial Sustainability and Competitiveness, Council on Energy, Environment and Water, that is CEEW. Mr. Hemant Malya leads the Industrial Sustainability and Competitiveness team at the Council. His work focuses on industrial growth through sustainable means. Next, we have Mr. Frank Catolhati, founder, CEO, Othello. Mr. Frank Catolhati is born and raised in the Arctic small town Bardo in the Barents Sea. Moved away as a young man for education for work in the military, it is the combination of building technology, background, and military experience that was combined to create the solution that became Othello. Mr. Eric Lau, strategic business leader, VFlow Tech, Singapore. Mr. Lau is a strategic sales professional with a global portfolio of experience that spans more than 15 years. He's a specialist in energy, renewable energy and storage, wireless, smart communications, smart grid, technology, telecommunications, SaaS, big data and analytics. I welcome the whole panel, and the session will be moderated by Mr. Kuldeep Indewar, Investment Projects, APAC, Metka EGN, and Mytilenios. Over to you, Mr. Kuldeep. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dipangna. Good evening, everybody. This is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this panel discussion on a webinar, and I welcome all the panelists and the guests. Guys, can you please put your mic mute? Yeah, thank you. So without wasting much of time, I would go to Dr. Elbia. Welcome, Dr. Elbia. And my question to you would be that how do you think the wind power technology has changed in last 20 years? How it would change in next 20 years? The second part of the question would be that what, in your opinion, are the solution to the intermittency of the wind power? And would we ever be able to breach the BETS limits with the wind energy?
Good morning from Brazil. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your invitation. I'm so glad to be here and discuss this very important subject. We need to be clear that the future is net zero. And when you think about the future, you know that for energy, we have renewable energy, new technology, and the decarbonization. About the wind, and when we see our experience, in Brazil, we have about 20 years in experience with wind. The first project started in 2002, discussion and to implementation this technology. This technology has been increasing so fast in the last 20 years, especially when we talk about prices and competitiveness. Brazil, we know that Brazil is a very, very renewable country. We have a lot of renewable sources for producing energy and electricity. And competitiveness here is the real word that you can discuss and think about planning or metrics. Or metrics in the last 10 years, mainly because wind is started to be so diversified, and these diversifications is about with solar, with wind, and the biomass, and the small hydro plants. Nowadays, our metrics for electricity is about 87%. And the wind here is nowadays 11%. The first source for produce electricity here is hydro plant, is about 60%. The increase in technology for wind is about the new generation plants. We started 20 years ago with 500 kilowatts, and nowadays we start to install plants with 6 gigawatts. Then we see that the new technology has been increasing in the potential for plants, but we can see that we have other possibilities with new technology, like hybrid plants, and we can put together solar and wind. We can put together storage. Thinking about the next 10 years, we have a special possibility to produce hydrogen, green hydrogen. Then our market has been increasing in this way that we can explore more wind, onshore wind, and now we are prepared our first process to implementation offshore wind. Then when Brazil thinks about the future and the implementation, we are thinking about to increase more wind plant determined the supply in the last 10 years, because we increased a lot. As I said, we started in 2011 with 1 gigawatts. Nowadays, we have 19 gigawatts, and we expect to 2024, 30 gigawatts. Then we have very good expectations about this.
Great. Thanks for that. My next question, Dr. Elbia, would be that as COP26, United Nations Climate Conference, will be hosted later this year, Global Wind Energy Council will be leading the campaign When You Are In. What are your thoughts and priorities that should be discussed in this conference, deliberated and implemented to reach to net zero?
Yes, we have a net zero campaign with wind, and we expect to implement in the next 5 years in whole world about 59 wind plants, gigawatts with wind plants. Then we in this campaign we expect to engage in other countries and increase the speed for installations for wind, because when you see the net zero report and the reset report from Global Wind Energy Council, if you want to find to net zero, we need to increase the speed for renewable. For wind, for example, we expect that in 2030, or increase need to be 3 times more than we had in 2020. In 2020, we had a record installation. We installed 98 gigawatts in whole world, but for to increase more and to find the net zero in 2015, we need to install more than 300 gigawatts in 2030. Then it is a big challenge, but for other hand, we have resources enough, and we need to engage investors to invest more in wind plants. It's onshore and offshore wind.
Thanks, Dr. Elbia. Now I would like to turn to Arjun. Hi, Arjun. Welcome to.
Hi.
Arjun, Mike.
Yeah, you're not audible. Can you repeat?
Yeah.
Hello.
So, Arjun,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yeah. Please.
Great. So my question would be, China, Brazil, and India are one of the top 3 producers of energy from solid biofuels and renewable energy waste, right? How do you see them progressing in next 20 years? And the second part of the question is, do you see any major innovation that you see in biofuel or biomass technology that would come in the foreseeable future?
Yeah, hi. So I'd like to start with my introduction. My name is Arjun Agarwal, and I'm here in the capacity to represent the KR Group. We've been involved in paper making and real estate and biofuels. Recently, we've diversified into. So there are a lot of things that we've been associated with power and energy, because paper itself happens to be a great power consumer. And we happen to be producing around 35 megawatts of power for our own paper making. So we actually know the importance and the efficiency to lead the power sector in this. So coming to your question, see, biofuel and bioenergy is something that's really closely related with the government mandate in any country said to be. So Brazil, China, USA, whatever country that you talk about has really, has gone really way ahead than other countries, because the government's been really supportive. They have all the raw materials available with them. To start with China, I suppose they've taken the biofuel policy in the long-term plan, and with programs like Blue Sky Protection and New China 6 vehicle standards, they've really set the bar high, and they've tried achieving 10% blending of ethanol with their petroleum. And they've also been able to achieve 2.4% in 2019. And they started really recent. They started this in 2017. And now Brazil coming to the picture. Brazil has always been the leader in ethanol production, with sugarcane being their major crop for this. And they've, I suppose, been able to achieve 27% of ethanol blending. That's really great. And so now they have so much of abundance of it. They're shifting it to sugar production now again. Programs like Renewable Bio that they've committed to, they have promised to reduce their emissions by 43% by 2030. Now, India coming in, the government lately has been really supportive and kind to the sector, because grain distilleries was not something that was really there in India. So the mandate recently in the last 1-2 years have been really supported with schemes like SAT-80, Satat scheme, that has made grain distillation really viable for the Indian players. So right now, the grain ethanol production is still an infant industry, and the government's giving really good support. Now, in times to come, coming to your question, in the next 20 years, what I see is that there are a lot of crops that are still there that can be really exploited to the last of them for the ethanol production. Because you see, we already have 1G ethanol, where we're producing it from sugarcane, rice, and maize. There is also technology that is coming up in all the nations for cellulose ethanol, where we'll be making ethanol out of cellulose. for example, wheat straw, rice straw, bagasse. So all these things, there's technology available. Also, India has technology available. I guess ICT and L&T were the first players in India to make it happen, but it has not been able to become really viable for the Indian private players. OMCs are taking up the technology. So that is one technology I see in the next 20 years coming up.
Yep.
Then there is technology for algal biofuels, the 3G ethanol that has yet to come. That's really not been exploited yet in any country, for example.
Okay.
And
Arjun,
so India does, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And do you see any technologies coming up in the near future? Just please be mindful of the time, and we need to wrap in 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I really see the cellulosic technology, the 2G ethanol coming up recent. So yeah, then that'll be good for the Indian subcontinent at least, because people living in Delhi might agree with me, the burning of rice straw is really a problem. So when you're able to produce ethanol out of cellulose, I think that'll be a great leap for us, yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Arjun. Thanks. This was very
Thank you.
insightful. My next question would be with Dr. Jay. Welcome, Dr. Jay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Dr. Jay, my question is, I see and we read about that C-STEP is working on a number of initiatives in the field of energy efficiency and innovation space. Can you provide 2 to 3 examples of cutting-edge technology related to renewable energy, net zero, or carbon reduction that can be implemented right across right now to cement our sustainability transition? And please be mindful of the time. Yeah.
Thank you, Kundeep, and thank you everyone for joining this webinar. I'll be brief, and clearly you can go online and check more information about this. So let me give you 2 simple examples. The first one I would like to talk is in the area of decentralized renewable energy. As you know, renewable energy is something that we are all talking about. I think there is no doubt that renewable energy will be used and that it will be sort of the source of our future energy. However, I think there are different forms in which they could take. You could have the large solar plants, you could have the large wind sites, but then you could also have or augment that with what we would call decentralized renewable energy. You could think of it from the perspective of it could be from the perspective of a smart microgrids that give entities such as villages or towns that are far away from the grid to get access to energy. That is one way of looking at it. And in that regard, we have been working a lot on developing techniques for rooftop photovoltaic, coming up with better methods to overcome the barriers that are both technical, regulatory, as well as financial through better assessments. On the other hand, the second piece of work is, as we know, the biggest source of emissions or GHG emissions that the IEA put out recently was in the area of transport. Very recently, we worked with the local DISCOM, which is BESCOM, on looking at how renewable energy from rooftop photovoltaic can be used to charge electric vehicles. And that is done on a priority basis so that it uses as much rooftop photovoltaic generated energy to charge the batteries of these electric cars. So you see, that is one way in which we can make sure that the biggest demand that is likely to come up in the future in, say, in transport will actually come from renewable energy. And that these are just 2 examples of ways in which we could use renewable energy in innovative ways to secure our energy future.
Thanks, Dr. J. My next question would be with Hemant. Hi, Hemant.
Hi.
Hi. So, Hemant, the CEEW Council, which you represent, came out with a publication paper with the title of Employment Potential of Emerging Renewable Energy Technologies. Can you please enlighten the audience on the same? There are many young audience in the group. And are there any upcoming technology in the renewable sector that you can enlighten us with?
Sure. Thanks to Kuldeep, and thanks to BRICS Chamber of Commerce and Industry for inviting me to this session. I really appreciate it. So in terms of our recent study, it is primarily focused on the job generation opportunities in the floating solar, space, which is, traditionally solar photovoltaics are located on land. So you have to mount all those panels in large, areas to generate power. But in this case, what we are looking at is, floating some of these solar panels on water bodies, such as, dams, etc., and generate power accordingly. So there are benefits of doing that because you don't have to deal with land preparation or licensing, etc. And also there is added benefit from the fact that because the panels are floating in water, they remain cool, and as a consequence, there is a little bit of efficiency gain, from that cooling effect. Now, there are some studies which indicate that in India the potential for floating solar is anywhere between 250 to 300 gigawatts. So there is that potential, and we wanted to understand how many jobs can be created if we can tap into that potential. So the study is primarily focused on the job creation aspect, and we think that for a roughly 10 megawatt plant, the number of full-time employees can be anywhere around 50 to 55, which includes employees at the production end as well as those working at the plant. So that's kind of the primary focus, and we feel that given the ambitious target that the government of India has set for 450 gigawatts by 2030, floating solar would definitely add to that capacity addition. So that's on our project. In terms of upcoming technologies, I think it is important to talk about solar PV because that's where much of the action is. So conventionally, much of the PVs that have been installed are polycrystalline, but now we see a new technology called heterojunction, which has lower manufacturing costs. For the uninitiated, it's simply a heterojunction is nothing but traditional polycrystalline panel which is sandwiched between two thin films, and given the construct of the panel itself, it makes manufacturing much easier. But however, the energy efficiency that, or not energy efficiency, excuse me, conversion efficiency that you get out of heterojunction is about anywhere between 5 and 8 percentage points higher than the conventional PVs that have been installed right now. So we can see a huge gain in the efficiency, and therefore it will reduce tariffs further beyond the roughly 2 to 2.2 rupees per unit that we are seeing right now. Now there is another area where technology is advancing fairly quickly and is important from a energy transition perspective, and that is in the battery cell space. And we believe that solid state batteries and metal air are going to be the future. Primarily because lithium ion it has its own limitation in terms of the resource being available. Much of the resource is concentrated, in certain geographies and with certain countries, and that makes it difficult to access lithium as a resource. Also, in terms of the engineering itself, lithium-ion batteries use liquid electrolytes, and therefore it can be, dangerous when the heat management is not done efficiently. So, metal air and solid-state batteries, which use solid electrolytes or metal, don't have these challenges, and the resources are fresh. So it makes it that much more attractive. And then finally, we believe that green hydrogen will play a very important role in the decarbonization process, especially for hard to decarbonize sectors such as steel, marine applications, or aviation. And therefore, talking about green hydrogen also means talking about electrolyzers. And conventional electrolyzers, especially the most commonly used, which is known as proton exchange membrane, is very expensive, and the cost of electrolyzers have to come down for green hydrogen to become economical. And there's an upcoming technology which is very, very promising, and that it is called ETAC, or electrochemical thermal activated chemical, in short, or in long rather. And the difference between the two, again, from a very lay perspective, is the currently used electrolyzers have a membrane which is made by only one company, DuPont, and it is a very expensive membrane, and the cost has been going up as a consequence of countries moving towards fuel cells and electrolyzer based green hydrogen production, and that membrane constitutes about 40+% of the cost. And therefore, it is going to be very, very difficult if we stick to that PEM-based electrolyzer system. Whereas this new system does not require.
Wrap quickly.
Yeah, just 10 seconds. So the new electrolyzer does not use any membrane. That's one. And it separates hydrogen, oxygen when it is produced in sequence, which means the efficiency of conversion is very high, close to 90% or higher compared to the conventional process or electrolyzers right now, which are in the 65 to 70%. So we can see a huge drop of cost, as a consequence of this new technology. So I feel that these are three very important technologies for the decarbonization to happen in the future.
Thanks, Aman. Thanks. My next question is with Eric. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Kudi.
Hi. Welcome, Eric. So, Eric, as you are a business leader, a strategic business leader for vFlow technology, how do you think vFlow technology is a new and innovative solution for energy storage systems? Please be mindful of the time. Try to wrap in 90 seconds.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. I think, first of all, let's thank you for Breeze Council for having me here and to share with the opportunity that in the technology energy transition. As the earlier panelists has mentioned, the impact, one of the way of energy storage is as to cement the energy transition. And just to highlight a bit brief of vFlow Tech. vFlow Tech actually found from a very intensive 7-8 years of research work and innovations from Nanyang Technology University, basically focused in vanadium flow battery, and lately commercialized, and we are about 3 years old. So we have gained a lot of tractions in terms of stationary storage for long duration discharge. As you know, the previous decade belongs to solar energy, and because it is cheapest and the cleanest source of energy. However, its growth is unsustainable because existing storage solutions are insufficient to support them. So there's a need for low cost, reliable, and long duration energy storage solutions. And this is where vFlow Tech battery innovations of energy storage system becomes important today. So what I mean by that is that existing battery technology like lead acid, lithium battery, which has been leading by the pack, are mature in the market. However, they are not suitable for long duration energy discharge. So they suffer phenomenon in terms of performance degradations, as well as a thermal runaway. And in fact, it poses a serious safety issue in many modes. So vFlow technology aims to address these issues with new innovation technology. So there's no denying or questions that renewable energy is the future, as earlier panelists has mentioned, but its continuous growth may be disrupted without a reliable storage solutions, which is critical to unlock the future potential of renewable. And today, government agencies, by far, if you have heard lately the announcement in India, are rolling up policies to promote energy storage, with India having 4 gigawatt floating tenders announcement. So you can see that in the next 5 years, typically there's more than a potential of $40 billion of stationary energy storage potential. So,
yeah. So, thanks, Eric. My next question is with Frank. Hi, Frank.
Say again.
Hi.
Hi, Frank.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thanks. So, and this is actually a very interesting topic. The way forward in energy efficiency is housing. And my question is, can't we design houses which are self-sustaining in terms of energy requirement? And how do you suggest we improve on energy efficiency and innovation of the housing sector overall? 90 seconds, Frank, please.
I'll try to keep it in 19 seconds. First of all, Kuldeep and the BRICS Council, thank you for having me. Mr. Tripathi was mentioning, which is the core of everything we're talking about, the implementation of renewable energy and reduction of usage of energy. Because if you're supposed to actually do something with the energy demand of the world, as the population grows and as the housing demands grows, where we come in, it is crucial that we are very aware of how. And when it comes to housing, it has two aspects as we see it: the production and the housing and communities at large, how it's run. And to reduce energy, and it's very important that we reduce the usage of new resources, that's energy effective. We use existing material where it's possible. Recycle materials, sorry, give me a second. Reduce recycle materials into high value materials for better life cycle assessment and lifespan. That also reduces the total pressure of energy. And it has to be energy efficient and greenhouse gas effective production. And the housing itself, as we've seen it, for us, it's not only housing, we are very focused on the energy part of it. How about we use the houses built as platforms to produce energy? By example, rooftop solar panels, where they can produce their own usage and put their extent, the overproduction into mini grids, as Dr. Jai mentioned. And this could also help financing the homes in the developing countries. And it's all about the urban planning, not the house itself, because one house doesn't do any difference in the usage of energy. You have to plan communities for maximizing energy production in relation to what I mentioned with solar panels. You have to plan for reduction of energy, as in when it comes to cooling and ventilation. It has to do with the orientation of the building, the sign of the building, and everything. So different designs for different areas. And you have to reduce the heat and demands of cooling, where it's in hot areas. We could use also to reduce the energy. You could use vertical gardens in the east and west walls, biogas, where we use the sanitary and domestic waste into a community gas solution, where the community gets gas from this waste. And of course, which I mentioned, and it has to do with how you plan this area, urban areas, where you mix the residential space, administrative space, shops, etc. This to reduce the use for commuting and the energy used for cars and commercial transportation.
Yeah. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
So panel members, now we'll go for another round of questions. Just try to answer in a couple of sentences very quickly in 30 seconds. And my question is with Dr. Elbia. Yeah, if you can quickly comment on the potential of offshore wind.
Yes, our potential for offshore wind is about 1,000, about 800 and 1,000, 800 gigawatts, 1,000 terawatt.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Dr. Elbia. Arjun?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Arjun, very quickly, I believe your company is leading company in terms of energy innovation. And how would you describe the things that distinguish your products and manufacturing processes from other companies?
We're all using a technology that has been well established, be it us or be it anybody, but we are striving to achieve better efficiency in our processes. For say, when you make ethanol, there's a lot of CO2 production that comes out. And the CO2 cannot be used for beverage companies as it has high arsenic content. So we're working on the technology where we're able to reduce it so that can get into the beverage industry for consumption. We're also working towards process efficiency we are trying to achieve something with the water treatment because this involves a lot of water consumption. So all of these technologies are something that we'll be working upon, and I think we'll be able to do it. Thank you.
Thanks again. Dr. J.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So, Dr. J, if we have to prioritize innovation in energy sector, what policy formulation implementation will be needed to catalyze innovation in India?
This is a very broad question, and I think what I will talk to is the need for better assessments. Assessments where we are not only looking at it from a pure technical perspective, but also trying to look at it from an environmental and social perspective. I think it's very important that our assessments need to be cognizant of these other pillars of society, because we cannot develop only with one leg of these three important things. We have to take care of our environment, and we have to also take care of our societies. And I think all of these things need to be looked at, and our assessment methods have to be part of that. Once you have those assessment methods right, then the policy formulation will flow quite easily based on that, because it will take care of all these issues related to society.
Thanks, Dr. J. My next question is with Hemant. Hi, Hemant. So, Hemant, we understand that you specifically work on myriad issues faced by small and medium businesses in India. What are some of the solutions that you have identified for the resilient survival of and the growth of this sector?
So broadly, two. One is, in terms of energy transition, the MSME sector utilizes 30% of all energy that the industry uses. So, in terms of energy transition, we want to look at distributed generation or rooftop solar bundled with some form of balancing for the intermittency. That's one. The second is, looking at energy efficiency within these small industrial clusters. It's important to deploy tools that help them identify where the opportunities lie, because at this point awareness is a big problem. They don't even know where the energy is going. So identifying where the energy is going and comparing it, or benchmarking it against best in class would help them, identify opportunities.
Thanks, Hemant. Eric.
Yes.
Eric, we understand that there are other innovative projects that you have been working upon apart from VFlow technology that are related to renewable energy markets. Can you please briefly speak about them?
Yeah, there's quite a few innovation initiatives that we have established, but one of which is like we have partners, or rather putting a test bed together with oil refinery players to actually using their storage tank they used to store energy mirrors to store electrolyte, and that allow us to scale from megawatts to couples of gigawatts as well. So we are participating into a project innovation like this in the island of Singapore, in Sebaru Island. And this energy player will develop a 2 megawatt using two tanks, two storage tanks, one for positive electrolyte, one for negative electrolyte, coupled with your power stack that will power the whole island eventually, that will multiply and produce 20 megawatt hour of energy. That will light the whole islands of Semarang Island in Singapore. So that's one. Other initiative also regarding to EV charging. Yes, you know that EV is a growing demand and exponential in no time. A lot of times you see that there is an existing petrol kiosk currently are trying to turn a conversion from a traditional diesel petrol kiosk into a charging station. So we have working with research institutions in the North Territory Asia, and working to convert the petrol kiosk station to a charging station, and using the underground tank to store electrolytes. And this country typically also has a lot of clipping loss, but mainly because they have a solar and wind farm, but they do not have the incentive to feedback to do net metering or even gross metering. So they actually we use those excess generations and fill out the tank and charge out and provide the energy for EV charging station. So these are some of the very initiative and potential innovations that we have done, and typically putting across a lot of efforts and research, working with partners in the region as well.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
So audience, before we go to Frank, we will open the session for the audience question. If you have any questions, please post it on the chat box and we will take it. Please be brief and to the point, and also indicate the panel member that you are directing these questions to. Please. Frank?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, great. So, Frank, our question is that as we continue to battle with inefficient urban development and the huge waste production that you see, how do you think your organization, Othello, and your innovative patented technology can bring a change in the
Could you please repeat, Kuldeep?
Yeah, sorry. So as we battle inefficient urban development and huge waste production, how do you think Othello and your innovative patented technology can bring a change in the traditional technique of waste management?
Yes, Othello's vision is to utilize the abundance of waste created worldwide to mine the waste dumps, to create the pull effect on the to clean up the ocean debris, and change the mindset of the world when it has to do with waste management. And doing that by battling one of the other big issues of the world, the housing deficiency. Just South Africa, south of Sahara, has a housing deficiency of about 160 million homes today, and it's anticipated to be about 360 million by 2050. So it's huge. And by battling, using the one thing to combat the waste problem, using the housing deficiency to battle the waste problem, you have solved two problems and changed the mindset. This is also really important, that we use this plastic waste in a cost-efficient way. Reduce the usage of other resources, and we can build this cost-effective, industrialize this production, and where we use local waste to produce local homes, to produce a lot of local jobs. One production unit, small production unit, would produce about 2,000 homes per year, or 60 square meter equivalent of homes. If you have smaller homes, more houses. And this is where the technology is really interesting and meets the question you're asking: how does this bring change? As Mr. Andrew Chiponda, the CEO of the bank Shelter Frick, said, it's not possible today to use traditional technology and traditional building materials to meet the housing deficiency of Africa. And this is same where else you have this huge amount of housing deficiency. So by utilizing the abundance of waste we have, you can build a lot of houses to battle the housing deficiency. And you could to jump back to the initial question, the first question, and you could use this as a platform to create new renewable energy as well, and help financing the housing deficiency and create the demand. And follow that demand. Yeah. Thank you.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Now we have a question from Vishwas Tripathi, sir. Please, can you?
Yeah, I'm Vishwas Tripathi. My question is to Mr. Eric Lau. He was mentioning about EVs as a electric vehicles industry, as a shift from fossil fuel and environmental issues to saving towards green energy. What I would like to just know from him, that even the EV industry, the batteries use fossil fuel. The batteries come from fossil fuel. So do we have any plan in future to reduce this dependence on the batteries which are made from fossil fuel?
Okay. Typically, there probably has technology in place, but today, basically all the EV cars, if you're talking about EV mobility, are run by lithium-based battery per se, because of the density, the power density. What I was looking at as EV evolve, in order to take on to the next new market, you need a desperate spread of infrastructure of EV charging station. And with the increase of this EV charging station, that would add stress on the grid. And the renewable is a way of energy transition that will help to energize these evolutions of EV charging infrastructure. And coupled with renewable, you know the intermittency problems of renewable being solar, wind, or others. Storage, long duration storage backup become the prominent mix and match for our total charging infrastructure, especially as an off-grid. So along continent or region whereby you have a long highway, for example, stretch, running an EV car, you will not want to wait for the next charging station that miles away. So intermittent, you must have a off-grid phenomenon to actually provide the charging facility for the EV adoptions. So that is what I'm trying to say, is that long duration discharge coupled with renewable will provide the cement a great potential in energy transition for EV. I hope I answered to your question, sir.
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. So we have an audience question, and this is directed to Mr. Frank. Can you please comment on the usage of solar energy in the production of bioethanol substances like maize?
As I see the question is Mr. Arjun or Mr. Frank, and I would guess that Mr. Arjun would be the better one to reply on that.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. So to take this question, to give you a brief about why solar cannot be used for bioethanol for maize, is because when you make bioethanol out of maize, there's when you make it from corn, there's this byproduct that you got to call DDGS, dry distillers grain soluble. That itself happens to be a very value-added product. So if we were to make bioethanol using the solar, and I don't think we'll be able to get DDGS. And DDGS is a product that really makes the industry viable, because that has its own good market demand. Thank you.
Next question is with Dr. Elbia. Dr. Elbia, if you can give your opinion on the feasible offshore wind tariff levels for India, considering the present onshore wind tariff levels?
Yeah, I believe that the technology for offshore wind has been increasing, and we can have a better costs. Then I think any new technology is feasible, but it's important to see about the competitiveness. Then it's important to understand the potential and the capacity of to explore onshore, because onshore started first exactly because of the technology and costs. Then I think is really feasible in more 2-3 years, and I believe any country can have this technology.
Thanks, Dr. Elbia. Now, in the interest of time, we will take last question, which is, I think, is the very important question, and I will take comments from some of the members. So the question is, what are your opinion on collaborative efforts by countries in terms of renewable energy, like International Solar Alliance, to enhance energy security and sustainable development, and to improve the access to energy in the developing member countries? And I'll first go to Dr. J, if you can comment on this.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I think there is no doubt that cooperation is the only way forward. This is a collective action problem, and it is necessary that the countries that are actually very rich in sunlight do not have the IPR or the intellectual property to take advantage of that. At the same time, you have countries that are developing the IPR that also do not have the kinds of sunlight and wind that we do have in some of the developing countries of the world. So I think it is incredibly important that the world comes together. I think the International Solar Alliance is a great effort by India, France, and other countries to actually bring everyone to the table and deal with it in the systemic manner that it is needed.
Thanks, Dr. J. Hemant, your comments on this topic?
So thank you, Kuldeep. I think just in continuation to what Dr. Sundi has said, one additional point is that whenever there is a scale up, similar to solar, now we want to scale up green hydrogen. One of the important aspects of market creation is generating the volumes necessary for the market to kickstart. And that can happen if countries collaborate. So if countries collaborate and come to a consensus that 10 gigawatts or 20 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity is required, then some manufacturer will step up and say, yes, we are willing to put the capacity in place. And that is essential and can happen only through a multilateral framework. Apart from the fact that there are opportunities to collaborate on IP generation, it is a fact that many of our labs already are working on some of the cutting edge technology, but it's not getting into the market. So there is the clear gap of taking laboratory research. That is again where multilateral collaboration can actually work wonders.
Dr. LBA, your comments on this?
Yes, I believe that this cooperation is really, really important when we are talking about a developing country. We need to be together because we have a very common point that we have the source. We have abundance in the sources, and we need to improve technology. And I believe that's important to discuss and to improve and innovation the process for include the renewable, because the basis for this we have that is the abundance in sources.
Thanks, Dr. Libya. Now, we have one last question. This is from UN Habitat Nairobi, Kenya. And they are thanking the panel for very enlightenment talk. And their question is, energy efficiency is the biggest issue for both the built environment and the mobility. And is there a time frame for BRICS to phase out fossil fuel cars? I mean, in your opinion, when do you think fossil fuel cars would be phased out?
Okay, let me just take that question. Okay, it's very subjective. I think the government play a very important very important things over here to how they rejuvenate or setting government policies to entice the development and adoption of EV, whereby contributory to net zero carbon as well in the environment. So there must be a stream of policies on incentive in terms of infrastructure build up. There is a lot of agency today in every country trying to invest in the infrastructure of EV charging. So parallelly, where the automotive are shifting their fossil car making to EV cars, eventually the infrastructure take time, so has to be parallelly enforced, and incentive and policies has to be set in individual government in order to propel the adoption of what you call it transforming fossil car to EV adoption. But what I could see here is that in many reports or researchers has been predicted by 2030 mandatory, so to speak, there will be at least 50% of the world automotive will be EV cars, so to speak. That number is just a high level, it's not specific. There's no calculation, so it depends on the in-country. As again I say, the infrastructure is a very important thing. I mentioned again. So also the availability, you know, and a lot of countries may look into approach whether the source of generations should it be coming from grid type or should it be coming from renewable. So it's still debatable, and also the incentive program, the tariff all come into place. So again, as I say, target globally as the driver will be parallelly the automotive makers as well as the policy maker for the infrastructure to grow. Right.
Thanks, Eric. Now,
Thank you.
gentlemen, I'll take the closing remarks from everybody for panel 1. And I'll first go to Dr. Elbia. If you can provide your closing remarks for the session.
Yes, I'd like to say thank you. It was very important your discussion here. Then I believe that it's necessary we work together because I believe we have experience, and I'm so happy because I noticed that everybody has been saying the same thing. We are sure that the way for renewable, for new technology is the same. And I think we have a good potential to improve the speed for energy transition and the low carbon economy. And thanks a lot for this experience. Then I'm available to other discussion. Thank you very much.
Yeah, then we can go to Arjun, your closing remarks. Arjun?
I think it's dropped off.
Arjun?
He exited the meeting because of some network problem. You can continue, sir.
I think you can go on to the next.
So you can,
yeah.
So you can go to the next speaker.
Can you hear?
Sir, I think you're having some network issues.
I'll request Jay sir to take over the closing remarks, please.
Yeah, thanks. First, let me, of course, in my closing remarks, I would like to thank BRICS ECI for organizing this.
Yep.
It was really good to bring us all together and discuss these issues. I would like to just leave with the thought that, as we all know, climate change is a collective action problem. If we are looking at energy efficiency and we're looking at energy and we're looking at innovations, I think we have to think about this in a slightly different way, where we will have to break down those barriers that we normally have in terms of the nationalistic barriers, where we try to pit country against country. I think we are all in this together. and we'll have to figure out solutions. The solutions are not solutions that we know of today. It's quite possible that we might get some solutions up into the future. And I think innovation, both on the technology as well as the policy regulatory aspects, are going to be very important for us to be able to tackle this particular problem, be it in renewable energy, be it in the way of reducing our energy footprint. At the end of the day, we need to give a decent quality of life to all our citizens. And I think that's all I will leave with. So thank you again for having me in this panel.
Thanks, Jay. Apologies, the call dropped. Next, can we go to Hemant?
Yeah, thank you, Kuldeep. Thank you.
Thanks,
thanks for inviting me to this panel again. And I think whenever there has been a crisis, humankind has risen. We have seen it during the pandemic now. I think climate change is even a bigger problem than the pandemic. And so therefore, it's time to revive multilateralism. That's our take. Thank you.
Frank, please.
Yeah, I'll be short. As Dr. Jai said, he pretty much said it. We're all in the same boat together. And to solve this, we have to think. It's about new technology. It's about skipping what this national or this traditional way of thinking, us against them, and we have to come together to solve this. As we've seen through the COVID-19 situation, we have been able to do this, and we should do this for, in some extent at least. And we should be able to do this in the climate change, when it has to do with the climate problems we're facing, because that's way more important and serious. So thank you for having me at CCI. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Then we'll go to Eric.
All right, I'm going to be very short as well. Now, thank you for having me here. I'd like to just say that continue to with our effort, with this platform, that we will continue to grow and share the common challenges in terms of energy transitions in various sectors, being whether solar, wind, or others. And we'd like to take charge how the developments in other regions, especially in risk area concerns, what are the challenges, and how could we add value. I think in the panelists, there's a lot of experiences in various sectors, and how can we contribute and add it to the success of some use cases and research success, in terms of helping and tackles the climate issues and net zero carbon mission. So with that, thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Eric. Now moving on, thank you to all the panelists for this session for your valuable inputs. The second panel today is on renewable energy market. What does the future hold? So for this panel, we have Mr. Ranjit Gupta, CEO Azure Power. Mr. Ranjit Gupta has extensive experience in renewable energy, thermal power, and the O&G industry with specialities in project management, business development, bidding, and project finance. Next, we have Mr. Ismael Guerrero, President of Energy Group and Corporate Vice President, Canadian Solar, Canada. Mr. Ismael has been serving as the Corporate Vice President and President of the Energy Business since July 2019 and has over 15 years of experience in the solar energy sector. Next, we have Ms. Kelly Alcock, Global Impact Project Officer, Oxfam, South Africa. Ms. Kelly is an environmentalist and sustainable development professional located in Cape Town, South Africa. She is employed by Oxfam South Africa as a part of the Global Impact Program focusing on development finance, including the role of South Africa in international financial institutions, IFIs, such as the BRICS-led New Development Bank. Mr. Vinod Rajwani, Managing Partner, Sooja Energy. Mr. Rajwani started plastic packaging in a plastic packaging business in 1987 and expanded in flexible packaging in 1992. Currently, he is also importing specialized packaging for food and related industry from China and other countries. He is also credited with the start of Sooja Energy for the installations of portable rooftop solar panels for industries, hotels, schools, showrooms, etc. Mr. Rajwani thus has a very diverse field of expertise and interest. Next, we have Mr. Ram Divedi, co-founder, Provide Dynamics. Ram Divedi is an investor, a professor of economic warfare, and co-founder of Provide Dynamics, which is an Indian EV startup building one of the country's first premium electric car, Extinction Mark 1. Last, we have Mr. Pashupati Gopalan, CEO and co-chairman, Sun Edison. Mr. Gopalan has been with Sun Edison since 2009 and is currently the president of India Business. He is responsible for building Sun Edison's renewable energy business in this region and has also led Sun Edison to build over 900 megawatts of renewable energy power plants in India, Thailand, Malaysia, South Africa, China, and Japan. Mr. Gopalan was named the Solar Power Person of the Year for 2014-15 by Fortune Media Group in India. We welcome all the panelists, and this session will be moderated by Mr. Rohil Ranjan, MD Chandrika Power and member of the governing body, BRIC CCI. Over to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dipangana. Can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can.
Yeah, so thank you, Dipangana. A warm welcome to everybody, to all the panelists and all the viewers. So I'd like to start with Ranjit, sir. I've known Ranjit sir since last 15 years, and he's the reason why I'm into renewable energy market. So, sir, you have been involved with renewable energy since a very young age, and have been closely, associated with growth of this sector since 20 years. So, can you tell the viewers, what are the future prospects of this industry as a whole, and any suggestions you have for upcoming entrepreneurs like me in this field?
Thank you, Rohil. Thanks for inviting me to this webinar. It's an honor. And yes, you're right. In some way or the other, I have been associated with this sector, which is the renewable energy sector, since 2003. So about 18 years. And I've had the good fortune to work in small hydro, in biomass, in wind, and now in solar. So I've seen most of the technologies that constitute renewable energy in India. My experience is largely India. In fact, only India. So I think the sector over the last 20 years has evolved quite a bit. You would not recognize how the sector was even like 5-6 years back. In the last 4 or 5 years, the sector has really taken. The climate change issues have come to fore, and everybody understands how important it is for all of us to ensure that we go towards towards net zero, carbon zero, or carbon neutral economy. And because of that, there has been a huge push from the governments to move away from fossil fuels towards energy technology. Also, what has happened and pushed the commercial aspect has also been very important. Earlier, we used to keep talking about, we've been talking about it since the 1970s perhaps, as to the day when renewable energy would be cost competitive, would be at grid parity. And, over the last 3 or 4 years, actually, solar power and wind power in India have become a lot cheaper than newly built thermal project, for example. I mean, you could argue that it is almost 50% cheaper than a new built thermal asset. So because of that, for the distribution companies also, it's a win-win situation that you can develop the renewable energy projects. You can buy renewable electricity from developers, from IPPs, and supply renewable energy to the consumer, and still be able to actually drop tariffs across the board over the years to come. So to that extent, the renewable energy trajectory of growth for renewable energy is going to be only steeper going forward. And I think what we need to do more, at least in India, is perhaps look at how we can, start using the thermal projects. I mean, there are many thermal projects in India that are 20, 30, 40 years old and have finished their useful life and are more polluting or less efficient than the new projects. We have to start going away from those, and that way we can perhaps even steepen the curve towards renewable energy in India. Though the government ambitious target. So we are all hopeful that we can reach there and prevent this climate change from becoming worse than it is today. As far as India is concerned and the new entrepreneurs are concerned, Rohit, it's a difficult subject actually, because you see, as renewable energy has taken off, the I should say the space for entrepreneurs in the traditional renewable energy has actually shrunk because of the fact that it's become a business for pockets, right? Renewable energy projects, when we started in this sector, we could set up projects with 50 megawatts, 5 megawatt, 10 megawatt projects, and they were considered to be a decent sized project. But today we are looking at grid connectivity down with assets, nothing less than 300 megawatts or 400 megawatts makes sense when you look at the tariffs that are being discovered. So because of that, the space for entrepreneurship on the traditional side has shrunk. However, what has of course, there are so many other ancillary services related to renewable energy, which could be to do with analytics, it could be to do with how we go out and make the projects more efficient, how do we operate them more efficiently, how do we construct them more efficiently on ancillary services which are still at a nascent stage, like EV charging or on battery storage, where there is still a huge play for entrepreneurs to make their mark. The space where shall we say, the barrier to entry is low, for example, rooftops or other distributed generation places, there the competition is very high. So the ability to execute is going to be very important, and that is where I think the next round of entrepreneurs are coming from. On this panel and previous panel, we have so many entrepreneurs who are looking at stuff which is out of the box, and that is where they can make money, I think. Thanks.
Sir, I had another question for you. So, renewable energy sources like solar and wind are non-dispatchable, and, they cannot be controlled by the operator. One cannot control when the sun would rise and when the sun would set. So can you enlighten the audience about, dispatchable renewable sources, which can be controlled by the operator, and what is its future?
So that is true, Ruhail. I mean, that is the biggest challenge that currently the renewable energy industry faces. Though I say that renewable energy is 50% cheaper than a new build thermal, but the fact is that the renewable energy, like you rightly said, is intermittent. It will happen when it happens. When the sun shines, you will have solar. When the wind blows, you'll have wind. When the water flows, you'll have your hydropower generation. So and biomass, unfortunately, is not at scale. You can't have 200,000, 300,000 megawatts of biomass just like thermal plants. So to that extent, the intermittency of renewable energy is certainly a concern. And as more and more renewable energy comes into the grid, we start seeing the famous duck curve, which affects countries where renewable energy is a lot more prevalent than other places. Like, for example, we keep hearing about the duck curve in California, where because of the fact that a lot of solar has been put into the grid, it becomes difficult to manage the grid, especially during the times when solar is at its peak, and you need to, as the solar starts to die, you have to ramp up either gas or thermal projects. So it becomes a little bit more difficult. However, a lot of work is happening on the storage technology, whether it is mechanical storage, whether it is battery storage. A lot of work is happening on these fields, and the cost of storage is dropping year on year. And we expect that over the next 3 or 4 years or 5 years, through the combination of assets, like for example, let's say a pump storage project with a solar and a wind project, or a solar wind project with some batteries, and so on and so forth, we believe that sooner than later we will have dispatchable renewable as a grid parity source of energy, and that's when really it will start to become feasible for us to completely take away fossil fuels from the energy mix. Till the time that renewable energy becomes completely dispatchable, it is certainly a difficult task to get rid of gas and coal.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you for Thank you for enlightening us with your kind words. So I'll move on to Mr. Ismail. So Mr. Ismail, we are all aware that Canadian Solar is one of the oldest companies in business, and you have 2016 patents and 55 gigawatts of solar panel delivered worldwide. Your company is one of the pioneers in this field, and having seen this sector closely since 20 years, what do you think are the future prospects of renewable energy market?
Thank you, Mr. Ruhail, and thanks to all of you for inviting me here. It's an honor to be here discussing with you. Look, as you said, Canadian Solar is very committed to the sector, and it was born basically with this intention to really make a change into the renewable energy space. So since the very beginning, it's a company very focused on technology development and technology deployment. Most of the patents that have been done in the solar industry have been done by Canadian Solar, and we keep on pursuing the same path. There is a very clear technology roadmap for the solar industry in the next few years to come that we believe is going to be achieved. Look at our commitment to keep on deploying and developing the photovoltaics technology is very clear, and it's what the company is going to keep on doing. The times, look, I've been myself like 20 years in renewable energies, and I remember at the very beginning, and some of the people that I'm sharing panel with are probably on the same experience. I mean, at the very beginning, when we were doing the things we were doing in solar, many of us were being told that this was useless, that this was never going to be changing the world meaningfully, that we were basically taking grants, government grants, or finance from governments on things that were going to be interesting but never meaningful. And what is happening today is that solar is the cheapest way to produce electricity in almost 70% of the world's surface. So the change that we are witnessing right now is massive. It's not that we don't need any incentives anymore. There has been quite some time that has been this way, is that now we are the cheapest way to produce electricity. And that is what is making a meaningful change all around the world. The main challenge, as Mr. Gupta just said, is being capable to dispatch this at any time. And for that, renewables are truly going to be needing the development of the storage technology. I mean, this is what we believe is going to be making the big change we are starting to witness already. And look, it's funny to see that what is achieving or accelerating this happening is another industry like the car industry that is developing the batteries so quickly that we can start to use them on energy deployment at a very competitive price. And we are going to be seeing very soon that solar plus storage or wind plus storage is going to be cheaper than gas in many countries, and it's going to have very similar dispatchable conditions. And then you have new technologies coming like hydrogen and some others that we have been discussing. So I think that the future of renewables has never been brighter, and things that quite honestly I was expecting my children would see. We are being so lucky to see it ourselves, and that's the way I feel, and that's what I think is going to be happening.
So renewable energy is expected to make about 30% of the world's energy by 2024. That's as per IEA. So what technologies and which sources do you think will be responsible for this exponential rise in percentage, and what ideas you have for budding entrepreneurs in this market? Which resources or sources are not being tapped, which have potential?
Look, there are many things still to be done. Traditionally, most of the pool of renewables generation has been covered by hydro, and still hydro represents a very big chunk of the percentage of renewables generation. Now, the problem that hydro has is that most of the places are already utilized, right? So truly make a meaningful change in hydro is very difficult now. So the main technologies rising a lot are wind and solar, and I expect that to remain being the case. If there is something like hydrogen popping up, in my opinion, it's going to take some time. I don't think it's going to be something that is going to be happening in this decade. I think that is something more to be experienced in the decades to come, but I might be wrong, of course. So I think that the main technologies that are going to be making this big increase are going to be wind and solar. This is my personal opinion, but everything is going to be depending on whether storage is truly deployed. If storage is not truly deployed, penetration of renewables is going to become more and more difficult. But I'm counting that this is going to happen, that the deployment of storage is going to come, and to me, wind and solar are going to be the ones making the change that is coming. In terms of opportunities, look, there are many things. There are many different things that are going to start happening. There is a lot of room on software development. I think that as renewables start to jump into the mix, manage all the different technologies and matching them with the load is going to be more and more difficult with the time. And there is a lot of software to be developed. And also the whole business is going to change as batteries start to jump into the space. There will be a lot of algorithms to be developed about when is the right time to charge a battery, when it's not. So everything related to software development, I think, is going to be getting a much more important role in everything related to energy. And there are many other things. I mean, from ancillary services on the storage plants, any of the new technologies that are happening. I mean, there are a lot of opportunities. I mean, there are so many that is very difficult to put a list, but I would probably focus on storage and software development if I were a new entrepreneur trying to jump into the space. That is probably what I try to do.
Thank you, Mr. Ismail. Thank you for your words. Now I'll move on to the next speaker, Ms. Kelly. So, Ms. Kelly, COVID-19 has derailed the future prospects of renewable energy market. How do poor countries take advantage of renewable energy resources which are available to them in future? What do you think a green recovery for all COVID-affected nations is a must? Why do you think a green recovery for all COVID-affected nations is a must? Sorry.
Thank you very much, Rael, for the platform. I think it's a very important discussion, I think, for South Africans that are joining in today. If we can just switch on the TV, we see what's happening in our country and how the pandemic has really, really impacted us. For the past decade, the South African economy has experienced stagnation, which has put quite a strain on the effort to tackle historical structural inequalities and unemployment and high levels of poverty. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, which broke out in March 2020, our country found ourselves in a very vulnerable position, which just deepened the economic crisis, where many people lost their jobs and have gone without income for extended periods of time. And we are suffering from a huge hunger challenge at the moment. So, and with this being said, our president then launched the South African Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. And this was a response to match or even surpass the scale of the disruption which was caused. And renewable energy plays a vital role. It's actually very well positioned in terms of our economic recovery, since we've got a very good landscape for wind and solar development in our country. And in regards to the BRICS countries specifically, in South Africa as well, a focus on renewable energy as part of our country's recovery is very beneficial in terms of socioeconomic opportunities, such as improving the security of supply and reducing electricity costs, co-benefits which are associated with renewable energy technologies, which generate significant socioeconomic spillovers like employment creation and community empowerment to industrial opportunities. in our country, South Africa, we responded to COVID-19 and we aimed to stimulate the economy post-lockdown through an infrastructure-led package. And this opportunity exists to address many of the electricity-related challenges in the country by unlocking the potential of renewable energy technologies. Unlocking technologies post-lockdown, our stimulus package would bring multiple benefits, from fostering inclusive growth and stimulating industrial development and sustainability in energy systems. And this would directly contribute to the country's energy security, protecting the economy and livelihoods from cost energy shortages, as well as diversifying our energy mix, as the technologies would meaningfully increase the resilience of our electricity system and the overall to external shocks. Our renewable energy independent power producer program has been very successful since its inception in 2011, where by December 2020, we've had 44,949 megawatts of electricity capacity added from 76 IPP projects, which to date procure 6.4 gigawatts of renewable energy-based generation capacity from 112 independent producers. And with post-COVID, we have now a new bid window that has just opened for 2,600 megawatts of wind and solar specifically. And if we go back to the hunger situation and how COVID has impacted, our BRICS countries, specifically South Africa, we shouldn't exclude the attention that we should be giving to how it affects the youth, which has been suffering deeply and disproportionately from the pandemic's economic and social fallout. And so, in my opinion, I wouldn't say that it's derailed the future prospects, but I think it's a huge opportunity for economic recovery. Someone's mic is on.
Someone's mic is on. Can you have your mic on mute, please, when you start speaking? Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks. And just to speak to the fact that, South Africa is one of the countries that are largely still dependent on coal fire, if not over 90%, and 44 million people are exposed to this air pollution from coal-fired power plants. And even though policy measures are put in place to address energy and climate concerns, they are undermined by other policies in other areas of government. And it just shows that South Africa further lacks policies to accelerate the development and deployment of low energy technologies. So I would close off on this question to say that it's very important in a development context to address institutional issues and diversification, and the merits and demerits of centralized powers as opposed to distributed networks, and also to take into account opportunities which are available by neighboring countries. Thanks, Ra.
Yeah, so to continue to what you were saying, so what are the key factors that you consider while deciding that a response, with how to invest in an energy market, renewable energy market? What key factors do you take into account?
Are you speaking to the second question on IFIs, Ruel?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. In the Oxfam South Africa context, we cannot exclude the issues of women and youth and social impact. And what we focus specifically on is development finance and the role of South Africa in IFI, such as the BRICS-led New Development Bank, where it is the BRICS mandate to mobilize resources for infrastructure and development projects. And this is giving out loans to BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, for those who've joined who do not know of the BRICS Bank, at significantly lower interest rates than any of the other banks. So this is, a multilateral development bank who's supposed to serve our countries. And they speak directly to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So in the Oxfam context, we specifically engage the NDB to promote civic space and engagement to address issues of accountability and transparency. So how are they inclusive? How do they consider social impact when giving out loans to our country for social infrastructure such as renewable energy investment or water, transportation, and how are they and also to emphasize effective use of public funds around people-centered development, as well as again promoting women's rights and women's economic empowerment. And this also speaks directly to the just transition. Last year, when I spoke in Civil BRICS Russia, we highlighted recommendations that was brought up in South Africa when we under our South African chairship. And we focus largely on DFIs and identifying issues of how do they define sustainability? What are the defining criteria for selecting projects? And how are they creating a mechanism to monitor transparency and accountability in evaluating the effectivity of the projects?
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. So I'll move on to the next speaker, Mr. Vinod. So, Mr. Vinod, as you are associated with funding, and funding is one of the main issues in the renewable energy sector, what are the future prospects of funding in this sector? And has COVID-19 impacted the funding of this sector?
Thanks, Rohil. Thanks to BRICS CCI for giving me a chance to speak on this webinar. Yes, we started way back in just a 5-year-old company. And initially we started as an EPC. We did a couple of CAPEX projects, but most of the time we realized that funding was the biggest problem for most of the entrepreneurs who wanted to do solar for their industries. We basically concentrated more on the industrial sector. Now, the basic challenges that most of these people faced was that they were already leveraged. They had equipment, plant machineries, which were already funded. And they did not have the additional funds to set up their solar projects, in spite of the fact that they knew they would be saving a lot of money. They preferred to invest the same money into their expansion capacities rather than investing in solar. Now, having seen that, we thought that there would be a very big market, especially for the MSMEs, if we can get some good funding proposals for them. There were companies like CleanMax and other companies who did support the bigger industries by giving them PPA models, especially for rooftop solar. But the other entrepreneurs who had good industries, viable industries with good balance sheets and were doing well, but were not rated into the A rate category, did not get the opportunity. About a year and a half back, we tied up with a European Impact Fund who recognized this opportunity, and we came up with a model, and we were the first ones in India to sign up a EMI model for funding a non-credited industry, where just like how you go and buy a car, you take a EMI for about 5 years or 7 years or 8 years. So we developed this EMI model, and currently we have almost about 20 megawatts in the pipeline funding these kind of industries. So I guess it did kind of have a little setback because of the lockdowns and the COVID situations, but wherever we have approached with this particular model, most of the entrepreneurs are like going for it, since they don't have to give any additional collateral securities or give any additional say down payments or invest their equity into it. We are funding almost 90% of their capex for them with this particular model. So looking forward.
I'll just add on to what you were saying. As the managing director and co-founder of Sooja Energy, how do you think the renewable energy market in India, especially solar energy, has evolved in recent times? Do you think that government initiatives to boost the solar energy have been successful? Are they working?
The last 2 years, we have seen the solar energy market really pick up, and especially after the pandemic, even more interest has come from the industries to kind of look into renewables, to reduce their carbon footprint and do something for society. As regards government initiatives are concerned, yes, it has helped, especially the suppliers and the suppliers of equipment and the actual off-takers of the power. For people in between, like the EPC operators and the other people, currently they are struggling, but I guess over a period of time, they also probably, the fly-by-night ones will definitely disappear, which a lot of them came up in the last couple of years. As regards the policies are concerned, government has different policies, different state governments have different policies. Some of them are giving you 80% of your connectivity, some are giving only 50% grid connectivity. Some of the states who have already surpassed their net metering policies have stopped giving net metering to industries. So if there could be a little flexibility in policies or more uniform policies throughout the states, I think that would be a big help to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Now we move on to the next speaker, Mr. Ram. So, Mr. Ram, EV charging has come a long way in the last few years. Please tell our viewers what the role of EV charging in the renewable energy market, and what does the future hold for renewable energy sector as a whole. We are a little short of time now, so if you can hurry it up a little bit. Thank you.
Sure. Pleasure. Hi. So just introduction, I run two companies. One is a finance project company. So we finance energy efficiency companies and projects in India. We are in a JV with a French company. You can see with my accent, I grew up in France. And the second one, Private Dynamics, it's an Indian electric cars company. So to answer your question briefly, people don't realize, but we are seeing right now an offset of moving an industry that was not in the grid, which is the car industry, into the grid. And we are not talking here about few gigawatts. We are talking about terawatts of energy. So on top of like all the BRICS countries are fast-growing countries, so you need to add more and more producing capacity in these nations. But on top of that, we will see in the very next few years, and all the single source industry are very strong. By 2030, the world will be the world of mobility will be electric, and so all of us here, all the people sitting here today, will have to produce the energy for this industry. And today, it's important to set up the sector, the electric car sector. Even if today, in many countries like my country in India, a big part of the energy mix is made out of coal, which is not at all a green energy. So it's important to claim that electric cars are really, I don't like the term, but green. It's important to have a large part of the mix that is, not made out of coal or petrol or whatever.
Yeah. So, there is something more, which I wanted to know, as your startup company will be launching the Extinction MK2 prototype, as you told us in November 2021. What are your thoughts about the green vehicle market in India? Do you think that there are some specific challenges particular to this sector, and how long your journey has been on working in a sector that isn't much explored in India, at least?
So first thing, I'm not very comfortable again with the term green vehicle, because I would love to claim that I'm a green vehicle, but everyone making car today, electric or not electric, is not green. If you want a green vehicle, buy a cycle. That's a green vehicle for sure. But if you have 2 tons of beautiful steel, electronics, and parts, it's not to move one person with an average weight of 70 kg. So you have 2 tons to move a human being of 70 kg. You cannot claim, and I'm not comfortable with saying we are green. For sure, we are much greener than a petrol car, maybe 5 times more greener on the life cycle of a product than a petrol car. And the big difference is the particles. You have no air pollution. That's for sure a big game changer. But I think the goal of this sector is to move to public transportation, because at the end, the challenge for us, we started 10 years ago as an electric car company. But I think the greenest thing we are doing right now is not about how the car is moving. It's about the fact that we don't sell cars. We run a fleet of cars. of cars. So what we fight is not petrol, is car ownership. Is the fact that why everyone has one, every household, like in developed countries, and now it's coming to our countries also, why every household has, like 1 or 2 cars. You create more parkings. These cars are used 4-5% of the time. They are never used, basically. And in each mall, each office space, you have more and more parkings. The cities are much and much bigger, and you need more and more roads and more parkings. And so that's what we want to fight first. Is like to put back the cars as a public transport, because the future of cars is like robot taxis. They will be driven themselves, and they will be robot taxis. And as a challenge in India, I think it's a great market to answer your question. It's a great market. We have a good support from the government. Okay, we can always do better, but the support is great. And I think a lot of companies are coming up. If you look at our sector, the car industry, we are not a lot in this sector, but in two-wheelers and three-wheelers, the market is already super mature in India. So we have great hope in the next 5-6 years.
Thank you, Mr. Ram. Thanks a lot for your words. And we'll move on to Mr. Pashupati. Green hydrogen is one of the most promising energy sources in the efforts to reduce carbon emissions. How do you think BRICS countries can adopt green hydrogen in their pursuit towards green economy?
Thank you, Rohel, and thanks a lot to BRICS, CCI, and Council for giving me an opportunity. It's an honor to be here. I think what we have to realize is energy ends up being a big part of civilization going through a huge transformation. And it's my belief that we may not, when we look back, I think these 1 or 2 years are going to be instrumental in transforming energy, and hydrogen is the future of energy. All energies will have a role to play. There will be batteries. Obviously, solar and wind is going to be a huge source of power for us, but unfortunately, they only work so many hours in a day. But simply splitting water and electrolyzing water is a very basic process. The technology has been around for several decades, but what makes it possible today is the fact that the cost of solar power has dropped to 1, 2, 3 cents a kilowatt hour, depending on the country and the cost of capital. So hydrogen is going to be in the range of $3 a kilogram, $3.50 a kilogram now, going to about $1.50 to $2 by middle of this decade, and less than $1 by end of the decade. Which means if you look at the diesel equivalent, hydrogen can compete with diesel starting now. But of course, it takes time for people to develop vehicles and put them on the road. By 2025, I think it'll be half the cost of diesel. And by 2030, it can be 1/4 the cost of diesel. And I'm only taking the 40 rupees or 45 rupees or 35 rupees, whatever is the cost of diesel without the additional taxes. So I personally feel India is going to see, and everybody like Ranjit and Ismail should love it, that India alone can install 300-400 gigawatts of renewable in this decade because of hydrogen. So I feel what the BRICS countries need to do is recognize this possibility. And the beauty of hydrogen is it's not something new. There is more than 70 million metric tons of hydrogen used in fertilizer and oil refining industry. The change has to happen to really using green hydrogen. And the application of hydrogen is numerous. You can make methanol and blend it with your current gas.
Can everybody please mute their mics, whoever is not speaking?
You can decarbonize steel. Instead of using carbon or coke, you can use hydrogen and do direct reduction of steel. Sweden has already demonstrated that. Germans have demonstrated trains with hydrogen. French have demonstrated buses with hydrogen. Americans and British are planning on an aircraft with hydrogen. I think for all long-haul transportation, fossil fuel will be replaced by hydrogen. The sooner you realize that, the faster you can do something about it and get on the bandwagon. Otherwise, what happens is you'll just be late and your country is going to fall behind because you don't make the policy and don't start on the transition soon enough. So I feel it's a In some sense, it's good because there are many applications. It is the most abundant element on Earth. It is 200 times more dense than lithium batteries, 200 times. But obviously for short transportation, for city transportation, battery EV vehicles would probably still be better. But anytime you're looking at longer than city ride, I think hydrogen will beat it. And that's why Toyota and Hyundai, two of the largest car manufacturers in Korea and Japan as a country, are hugely committed to hydrogen economy. And I think other countries in BRICS, we should do our part and do the needful to. And this will be the driver of renewable as well. For people like Ranjit, I think they should love that they're going to create huge amount of capacities driven by hydrogen consumption, hydrogen electrolysis, essentially. Yeah, go ahead, Rohit. That'll be my point. It's just sort of call to action to wake up.
Yeah, so Sun Edison is known to bring some of the best solar products to India. The company is also planning to focus on bringing solar energy to consumers' rooftops and rural areas through solar water pumps. Solar energy has the potential to power the rural areas of our country. How do you think companies like Sun Edison and others can work in order to explore an unexplored market in rural India?
Look, I think if you take the case of India, there are 30 million irrigation pumps, and there is probably another 10 million in wait list, and the pent-up demand is probably another 10. So you're looking at a country that has a market size of 50 million irrigation pumps. I think you should just convert all of them to be solar. Solar is beautiful because farmer needs to go into the fields during the daytime, and solar works during the daytime. In this application, you don't need storage as well. So it makes it quite economical. I think it's just the policy and the bureaucracy needs to do whatever it is. And my personal recommendation to all my friends that run the government is stay out of it. Really, I think if you can stay out of it and give minimal amount of subsidy, don't run these tenders and L1 process. Automatically the private industry and the banking sector, the priority sector, banking sector, will automatically make it happen. And you're looking at more than $100 billion of solar water pump just in India in this decade. But that'll happen only if the government officers have a small amount of consistent subsidy and stay out of it. Don't try to structure the program. Let the private market make it happen. Let the banking industry finance the most bankable, the most reliable, and the best brand out there. Let the private, the government does not come and sell refrigerators. Government doesn't decide whose microwave oven one should buy, whose car one should buy. So why should they specify which solar they should buy? Let the market decide that. So that would be my humble request to all our government leaders in all the BRICS countries. I think irrigation pumping is something that we should do immediately.
Actually, sorry, I'm interrupting you. Many questions have come for you. So I'll start off with the first one. It's from Mr. Kuldeep. He's saying, what percent of total energy consumption globally can be replaced by hydrogen? What practical challenges do you see in achieving this? What percent of total energy consumption globally can be replaced by hydrogen? What practical challenges do you see in achieving this?
See, I broadly, if you just fast forward about 20, 30 years, call it 40 years, I only see 4 sources of energy, right? You have solar, wind, hydrogen, batteries, and battery will be whatever technology wins. It's just going to be a combination of these two. I think solar and wind will dominate, but they're only available few hours in a day, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. We need to use them, generate hydrogen or store it in a battery, and that will run the world. I don't know. I mean, maybe 30, 40% is each of them could be a fourth or a third of the mix, and this will happen in our lifetimes, everybody here.
So, Tripathi sir has a question for you. Tripathi sir?
Yeah. Pashupati,
Hanji.
If you remember me,
Yes,
I
sir,
think
yes,
we
sir.
have met in 2011.
Yes, sir. I remember, sir.
MI Solar, MI Drive that, right? Remember I had
Yeah,
30 megawatt each, which we all discussed, but it didn't go through.
Didn't materialize, yeah.
Now, because Gujarat state was the first state which spearheaded the solar policy which was said by the country, right?
Very, very
Remember
true.
it? Okay. Yeah.
Ranjit company did the first utility scale plant in India, 2
Yeah.
megawatts in Punjab.
Yeah.
And we did the first utility scale plant in Gujarat, in
Yeah.
Gandhinagar, outside
Yeah.
of PTU.
So I met you in 2011.
Yeah.
We discussed something which ultimately I sold it to Wellspun. But I think we have interacted that time together. I had got 30 megawatt, 60 megawatt with me and my company. What I want to know from you is two things. One is that time, if you remember, PPA was 12 rupees per unit PPA, right? 12 rupees. Now it has come down to minuscule. Number one, how do you find the transition from 12 rupee to minuscule as on date? Is it viable? Number one. Number two, what you are saying about rural pumping and all these things through solar. How about looking through cooperatives in the country who can spearhead the same thing without government support, with farmer support?
Absolutely, sir. I think we're in discussions with cooperatives like Amul and Nandini and Gokul. There are many. I think India as a country has beautiful structures for us to penetrate rural India. We just need to work with them. And the banking sector needs some hand-holding so they can feel comfortable with the credit. But going back to your previous question of, is it viable? I think, sir, people like Ranjit have made sure that they have brought the cheapest sources of capital in the world to India. And people like Ismail are ensuring that they are so advanced in technology. And it's just a 20-year-old industry, so very young in its current shape and form. The modules are getting better and better every year. You're going to see 750 watt peak modules. They're going to get better. I think by 2030, India will have solar electricity at 50 paise a kilowatt hour. And people, international developers like Metka, which Kuldeep runs in India, they are coming to India to take positions and be equity owners. The whole renewable industry has been built with significant amount of foreign investment, both on the debt and the equity side, but maybe more on the equity side. But equity is what matters, honestly, because equity is what is actually taking risk in the country. So I think we have the best of brains, fortunately, even in today's session, and 2 rupees or 250 doesn't matter. Maybe it is viable because it's the lowest cost of capital has come to India, and the technology that people like Ismail are going to progress is going to keep pushing it down. We just need good policy, good power purchase agreements, proper offtake agreements, and it'll automatically happen.
Yeah, myself being chairman, Pashupati of BRICS CCI, I'll be coming back to you with proposals on solar in a bigger way, plus this village rural thing. And I hope that you will contribute.
For small solar, come to me. For big solar, go to Ranjit.
Oh yeah. Right. We all will come together.
So I have a question for Mr. Ismail. So from Mr. Roman, would it be better for Brazil to change to wind and PV instead of still following new large dams, as they are far from consumer, have more damage to nature and cause social or indigenous issues? And PV and wind can be built in a smaller suitable areas close by the consumer and don't require such mega grid investment. Mr. Ismail.
Thank you for the question to Roman. Look, Ruhail, if you don't mind, I would like to comment something on what my friend Pashu just mentioned. I think that there is something that people are not understanding well, and they need to understand that it's going to happen. Electricity is going to be generated almost for free relatively soon. Because look, like Pashu just said, once you have basically solar, wind, electrolyzers out there and storage systems, you have a way to generate electricity that it requires many few people operating it and doesn't have a fuel cost, because it's basically the sun, the wind, and the water. So we are moving from something that we didn't pay attention to, but has been super expensive, something that is going to be having almost a zero cost to produce. And I don't know if we will see it, but it's not science fiction. It's going to happen almost for sure. And I think this is what people need to understand. There is a huge opportunity on this energy transition for all the governments on job creations and many other things. But in regions like the BRICS, it's a significant change because you guys are not going to be needing anyone to be giving you the fuel. You are not going to be needing anyone to giving you the technology. You guys and everybody else is going to be capable to generate whatever energy they need almost for free. It's only going to be the capex what is going to be required, the initial investment. But all these technologies are going to allow the world to have super cheap electricity forever. So it's a dramatic change in the whole world paradigm. And I think this is what Pacho is trying to communicate with his enthusiasm. What we all need to understand is that the change is much more significant than anybody understands today, and it's coming very quickly. So whatever country doesn't embrace it is going to be on strategic troubles. I mean, this is what it is. Let me go now to the question on Brazil. Look, I think you're right, because look, ultimately it's going to happen what Pacho just said. The main sources of electricity are going to be wind, solar, storage, and electrolyzers on the long run. What I think is going to happen. So should countries invest on new hydro dams? I wouldn't do it if I were a politician. I don't know the reasons behind. And look, in Brazil in particular, you know, the commitment of Canadian Solar with Brazil has been very strong. We are the single party who won on every single auction there, every single one. Brazil has an extra problem. That is when there are droughts that are not very common, but there are sometimes, electricity price goes to the roof because there is no water to fill the dams, right? So that is an extra risk that governments need to be taken into account. To me, if I could, I would better embrace solar, embrace wind, embrace storage, because this is going to be much quicker and it's going to be much cheaper and it's going to be much better for your country. This is the approach I would take. But look, I'm not the only person with an opinion, right? That's just my humble opinion, but I strongly believe that this is the correct way.
So I have another question for Mr. Pashupati from Mr. Harshal. So can Mr. Pashu comment on feasibility of green hydrogen in utility scale storage? And also it would be of great help if you can comment on commercial viability of the same.
Yeah, look, I think definitely, I think based on the calculations that I've seen, it might make sense to transmit electricity and generate hydrogen wherever your load centers are. It might make sense to have large 5-10 gigawatt solar farms in Rajasthan or Gujarat, or offshore wind off of the coast of eastern part of India, but then go and generate hydrogen outside the city centers, because the use of hydrogen was going to be in industrial areas and for perhaps transportation and other uses in the cities. So the numbers I gave you, as I told you, I think the numbers that we see are about $3.50 per kilogram around now, about half of that in 2025, and maybe another 85-90 cents a kilogram towards 2030, right? Based on assumptions on, of course, solar, which is, let's say, 2 rupees now, 1 rupee in 2025, and 50 paise in 2030, right? There was another question about safety. I think, look, hydrogen has been generated for many, many decades and being used. Already you have more than 70 million metric tons of hydrogen used every year. Japan and Koreans have released cars and vehicles which are operating already, the Mirai from Toyota. I think Indians have to learn and make sure that we leave no stone unturned, and other BRIC countries, in compromising safety. Fortunately, it's the lightest element. If you do not know, it's atomic number 1. So being the lightest element, if there is a leak, it just goes up. It does not necessarily stay. Obviously, any explosion risk will be only if it's constrained. But in the technology, there may be a difference. If you go for alkaline fuel cells, because there may be imbalance in the electrolyzer between oxygen and hydrogen part of the system, that imbalance can get hydrogen and oxygen to mix and cause explosion, which is why the Americans shifted to proton exchange membrane or PEM several decades back, while maybe others have not. So there is history in the US of safety incidents in the alkaline fuel cells, and the PEM has had a very good history and never been a problem. This is just from, I think all of you can pick up and read up about this. But anyway, the bottom line is we should have a very safe, strong safety, and it's no different than handling gasoline, which is inflammable, or CNG, or other type of explosive or inflammable materials.
So I have a question for Ranjit sir. Which has better future, sir? Solar, wind, or small hydro out of the three?
So, Ruhel, as far as the small hydro is concerned, by definition, it is small hydro. So you cannot power the world with small hydro, right? Small hydro is more opportunistic, really, wherever you find the opportunity to build a small hydro. So small hydro is not really in competition with wind and solar, given the gigawatts and terawatts of energy that are required. As far as wind and solar are concerned, like all the panelists have said, there is a space for both. You cannot just run the world. Even when there was coal, there was also gas, there was also nuclear, there was also hydro, there was all kinds of. You need to have a basket of energy that is diverse, and especially in a country like India, especially wind and solar are very complementary. Typically, you get wind in the night in India, so therefore it works very well. Solar and wind hybrid projects can give you plant load factors if designed properly of upwards of 50%. Right? So therefore, it makes sense to have both. And given like the panelists are talking about the cost going down, costs are going down for both, for wind and solar. Perhaps for wind, which is not going down as quickly as solar, but the price is down for both kinds of energy, and both will have a place in the future.
Thanks a lot, sir. So I have a question from Ms. Kelly. Ms. Kelly, can you enlighten us with any investment possibilities in South Africa in renewable energy?
Yeah, sure. I think in the past, what I can speak to since the establishment of REAP, we've had large amounts of investment, private investment that still is driving our renewable energy sector. And it's very much still there because South Africa has very good solar and wind resource. And with as I was saying, the challenge with there seems to be large amount of political will, but then policies that are very uncertain for sectors such as manufacturing. And I think a lot of EPC companies and O&M companies are very, very interested to invest in the South African market, especially the manufacturing sector of turbines and solar, as we've got the climate for it, as we are still exporting all of our wind turbines in the sector. So I would say that there is quite a large amount of investment or investors that are interested to invest in South Africa or in the South African market.
Thanks a lot, Kelly. So I have a question for Mr. Vinod. Mr. Vinod, if you can enlighten us about future of MSME funding in this renewable energy sector.
Rohel, MSME is the biggest growing sector in India as of now. So if more financial institutions, banks and all become a little bit more lenient into funding these industries for their solar projects without putting a burden on their cash flows and asking them for equity or collaterals, I think this sector is going to grow through the roof probably in the next couple of years, because most of these entrepreneurs now have realized the importance of saving money through power for their industries.
Thank you, Mr. Vinod. So our next question from Mr. Ram. The question is a very interesting one. Which of the BRICS countries do you think will have the brightest future in EV charging?
Oh, it's difficult. It's difficult to say. So far, it's China from far. Everyone talks about the California and the Silicon Valley and everything, but the largest market in the world right now for electric cars is China by far. If you look at the most valuated cars company in the world, Tesla is first for sure, but after it's a lot of Chinese companies. So I think China did a fantastic job there, and I would place India just after, because India has the same thing of a lot of large city, large population, and a good will to move to electric cars. For example, you saw what happened with the CNG, with rickshaws and buses, everything. No one thought like few years ago that all this sector will move to a compressed natural gas, and we did it in very few years. Same in two-wheelers with companies like Ather and something. It's moving very, very fast. So yeah, I think India will move there. But on a global scale, everyone will go. It will change for 4 years, 5 years, there or there. But the whole world will move to electric cars, and the whole world will move to automated vehicles. And we can debate about that later. But if you think that it will come before in California, that in Nigeria or Indonesia, you're wrong, because if you make a autonomous vehicle, it's the same difficulty to do it anywhere in the world. So it will come at the same time everywhere in the world.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Ram.
Thank you so much to all the panelists for such an insightful and enriching session. Now we're coming to an end and wrapping up the session. So I would like to request Rohel sir, Mr. Rohel Ranjan, who's member of the governing body, BRICS CCI, for the vote of thanks.
First of all, I would like to thank everyone for taking out their time for 2.5 hours, sitting with us, answering our questions, having a meaningful discussion. We got some good questions, we got some wonderful answers, but end is inevitable, and hence this webinar has also to come to an end. And on behalf of BRICS CCI, I take this opportunity to propose vote of thanks to those who have directly and indirectly contributed to this event on future of energy innovation, renewable energy, and energy efficiency. At the outset, I would like to thank all our panelists and moderators who made this event successful. We are really enlightened with your knowledge and presence. I would also like to thank all the attendees who took out their precious time from their busy schedules to attend this event. I would also like to thank our partners, sponsors, Center of Science and Technology and Policy on Energy, Environment and Water, Chandrika Infra and TV BRICS. I would also like to extend my warm regards to the motivated and dedicated secretaries of BRICS CCI who have been working for weeks to make this event happen successfully. I cannot thank everyone, in one go, but I think I have covered everyone, and I cannot thank everyone enough for their involvement and their willingness to take on the completion of tasks beyond their comfort zones. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.